Hey, so we're always talking about wealth in terms of numbers, right? Net worth, income, how much is in the bank. But today, let's try something a little different. Let's actually explore what wealth feels like, day in and day out, from having literally nothing to having almost everything. Let's dive in. So, really, what does it feel like? You can't find the answer on a spreadsheet. It's about the very first thought you have when you wake up in the morning. Is your main goal to find a public bathroom, or is it to read a one-page summary your chief of staff prepared for you? We're about to walk through that entire spectrum.
So we're starting at the absolute baseline, a place you could call the daily survival loop. And in this world, you're not planning for next month or even next week. Your entire focus is just on getting through the next few hours. When you're homeless, your day kicks off before the sun is even up. And your top priority? It isn't some big meeting or a deadline. It's finding a bathroom, finding clean water. Your own body is a constant, aching reminder of where you are. Stiff, sore. Food isn't a pleasure, it's a mission. And that feeling of hunger, well, it's just always there, this constant companion. Your whole day revolves around staying safe, staying warm, and finding a place that won't kick you out. And this right here illustrates a totally devastating trap. See, to get a job or even some basic services, you need an ID. Simple enough, right? But to get that ID, you need an address, the one thing you absolutely do not have. So for people in this spot, paperwork isn't just a hassle. It's a brick wall, a cruel catch-22 that's designed to keep you stuck. Now, let's imagine you move up just one tiny step. You're in deep poverty, but you've got a roof over your head, maybe a room you rent by the week. But that feeling of security, it's just an illusion. You're still not sleeping well, but it's not because of the noise on the street anymore. No, now it's the anxiety that keeps you up. What if my hours get cut? What if the car finally dies? Every single night is just this fragile hope that that thin little thread holding your life together doesn't snap. And that brings us to the next stage, the edge of stability. Life here is a constant, nerve-wracking balancing act. Sure, you're out of that day-to-day survival loop, but you are perpetually one piece of bad luck, one flat tire, one sick day away from falling right back to where you started. This is what that financial tightrope looks like in black and white. The money coming in barely, and I mean barely, keeps up with what has to go out. And a lot of the time, it falls short. There is zero margin for error. If the power bill is just $20 higher than you planned, you have to decide what doesn't get paid. It's a constant, stressful juggling act. Honestly, this is the perfect symbol for this whole stage of life. That check engine light? It's a problem you know is there. You see it every single day, but you just plain can't afford to deal with it. So you just try to ignore it, driving around with this low-level hum of anxiety, just praying today isn't the day it all comes grinding to a halt. Okay, as we creep into the lower middle class, something small but really, really important starts to happen. You can start to plan, just a little bit. You got a steady job, so you can actually track your paid time off and think, maybe I should save a few of these hours for an emergency. You might even have a few $100s tucked away. It's a tiny cushion for sure, but it's the first time you can look at next week with some tiny feeling of control. Now we get to a major turning point. This is where you finally get what's called the comfort of margin. And your entire mindset does a complete 180. You go from being reactive, constantly just putting out fires, to being proactive and actually preventing those fires from even starting. And this chart really lays out the huge difference. On the left, you're only dealing with problems after they've become full-blown emergencies. But on the right, you have the resources, both time and money, to handle things before they blow up. See, you're not just surviving anymore, you're actively managing your life. This is the real feeling of being middle class. A pipe starts leaking, you don't spend your entire Saturday watching YouTube tutorials hoping you don't flood the kitchen. Nope. You just call a professional, your bills are on autopay, you've got a 401k. The feeling isn't necessarily that you're rich, it's that you're stable. The ground finally feels solid under your feet.
And in the upper middle class, that stability really starts to bloom into genuine comfort. This is the point where money starts buying back your single most valuable asset, your time. That robot vacuum, the house cleaner who comes on Fridays, those aren't just luxuries. They are investments in your own freedom. You have enough extra that you're not only planning for your own future, but you can actually contribute to things you believe in. You feel secure, and you're focused on what's ahead. So this brings us to the last stage, where the whole game just completely changes. It's what you'd call the freedom of capital. Money is no longer just a thing you use to live. It's now a tool that actively works for you, generating more resources, and more importantly, more options. Remember that slide from the very beginning, paperwork is a wall? Well, this is the complete inversion of that idea. Paperwork is no longer a barrier you have to figure out all by yourself. It's something that's just handled for you by a team of professionals. Your only job? Just sign on the dotted line. The wall has been replaced by a service. At this level, honestly, the numbers just become kind of abstract. You're not personally managing your life anymore. A family office does. That's basically a private company whose only job is to manage everything for you, from your investments and legal stuff to your travel and even your personal security. It's a totally different scale of operations. So what does work even look like here? Well, it's not about clocking in hours or getting through a to-do list. It's about making a handful of huge, high-leverage decisions. The choices you see here aren't about earning a paycheck. They're about deploying massive amounts of capital in ways that can literally reshape entire industries and communities. And ultimately, this is what it all leads to. The real luxury isn't the fancy car or the giant house. It's having complete and total control over your own time and your own environment. If a meeting suddenly moves from New York to London, you don't cancel. The jet is just rerouted. Your options are pretty much infinite because money is no longer a constraint on anything. So if we had to boil this whole journey down to one core idea, it's this. From the street corner to the private jet, the true measure of wealth isn't the dollar amount. It's the number and quality of the options you have. It's the freedom to make choices, both big and small, without being held back by a lack of resources. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. When you look at wealth not as a number, but as a feeling and a set of options, how does that change the way you think about your own financial life? It's a powerful lens to look through. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.